back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I am here today to talk about the SPFBO, which is the self-published fantasy blog-off. It is an award that is run by Mark Lawrence, and I am one of the judges for 2017, so I'm very excited about being one of the 10 judges. I will link all the other judges down below, and I will also link the original blog post where Mark Lawrence kind of explains what the award is and what it recognises and how the whole process works. I've also done a video announcing it on my channel, so I'll put a link to that in the cards and below if you want to go and see all of the books that I will be reading. Basically, the main aim is that I have to read 30 books, and from those 30 I have to choose one that I put forward as my finalist for the shortlist. So I have currently read about 8 of them, and I'm going to talk about the first 5 that I read today, and then I'm going to tell you my top 3 of that first 5, and I'll be reviewing those 3 individually and doing like full-length reviews, so I won't go into too much detail on them, but my lowest 2 for the first 5 I will tell you a bit more about in this review. So let's get started. The first 5 books that I read for SPFBO. Here we go. So coming in at number 5 on my first 5, Chameleon Assassin, which was by B.R. Kingsolver. I wasn't sure how to feel about this one when I picked it up because I knew going in that it was an urban fantasy just from looking at the cover and reading a bit on the blurb, and I personally am not a huge fan of urban fantasies. That is not to say that this is a bad book by any means, it's just to say that I personally don't love urban fantasies, and it was going to be quite difficult for an urban fantasy to get my vote. However, this book had a few more issues than just being urban for me personally, and I feel like it is a story that could have done with a lot more editing than it currently had. So this story follows Libby, who is a mutant, and she lives in a world where mutants are not too uncommon. It is fairly common to have mutant people in this world, and she is the daughter of some very powerful people, so over her lifetime she has been trained specially, and she is now one of the very top burglars and assassins of the age. A lot of people kind of hire her to do specific jobs, and she's definitely someone who you don't want to mess with. She is quite the character, and she's definitely feisty. Now, I liked Libby as a character. I think she was a good character who was fun, who was interesting, who definitely had a kind of uniqueness about her, especially because of the mutation that she was able to call upon. But personally, I felt like she wasn't utilised to the extent she could have been, and I kind of wanted to see more character growth as the story went on. We did see some moments where she kind of made decisions that influenced later things, and I felt that was good, but I would have really liked to see just a little bit more from her. Libby herself is actually kind of almost a chameleon human. She's able to sort of transform into chameleon-like ways into like different forms and characters and people and stuff like that, which is definitely a cool idea, hence the name Chameleon Assassin. I just felt that the kind of execution was a little bit lackluster. She's kind of essentially a PI character, a private investigator for hire who people go to try and figure out things, whether they be crimes, whether they be different situations and scenarios, whether it's finding out what happens to your children at night when they sort of sneak out. It's all those sorts of things. I definitely enjoyed the fast pace and the kind of badassery of this. It's feisty, it's fast, it's quick. There's no real hesitation about launching you into the plot. Instantly you kind of get going with it and you're thrown into the action, which is great. I definitely enjoyed that, and I think for urban fantasy that works pretty well. I also quite enjoyed the family dynamics. Nearly always when you read SFF you find that the mother and father are either divorced, separated, or dead, and they're just not in the character's life. So it was quite nice to actually have a story where we had both the father and the mother being in the character of Libby's life. Even though they weren't directly involved with everything, she kind of checked in with them a lot, and they were a major part of the story as well, because they not only influenced her, but they also kind of gave her a bit of a depth to her character. The concept of the world, which is a world that has a lot of mutant technology and new technologies and different types of people, definitely cool. I just felt like it was not developed at all, and I think probably that comes from the fact that it's quite a short book, it's very fast paced, the world is not really given a huge chance to develop and to grow, and although this is an urban fantasy, it's kind of set in a version of our world. I do feel like because of all the new technology, it would have been nice to see a bit more of an expansive overview of what this world was really like and how it differed from ours in particular. The plot itself focuses on a drug that is kind of taking over. It's called Love Days, and it kind of means people fall in love and in lust and they pass out and they get into terrible situations, and some people are dying from it. Libby is recruited to try and find out where it is coming from by a team, and she has to get into some pretty nasty gangster kind of situations to try and figure out where it's coming from and who is supplying the drug and how it's getting to these teenagers who are becoming violently ill and possibly dying because of their exposure to it. Overall, I think my thoughts are that this was a solid book with good ideas, but they were not pushed or executed as far as they could have been, and I would have liked more than what I got. There was a decent world set up and a decent character. Again, I wanted more from both. And I felt like at times the plot was a little bit predictable, so it would have been nice to see some more interesting things done. But I think this is the first in a series, I get that impression, so possibly it will develop as the series goes on. And overall, I personally gave it 2 stars. It is an okay read, it definitely has a lot of potential, but it wasn't my favourite of the 5. So, the next book that I read was Princess of Zelena, which is by Giselle Marks. This one is kind of a strange one because I would almost class this as science fiction rather than fantasy, just because I felt like it was set in space on another planet with an alien species at the forefront and a lot of technology kind of taking the centre stage. It's a very erotic story, and it definitely features a lot of sort of sexual tension, sex itself, and very amorous relationships, so bear that in mind. There is also some rape and things like that in this story, so it's possibly not one for everyone. It focuses on a world where these kind of alien creatures called Zelenans live on this world, and they are the dominant force of this world. They sort of rule over everything. They're kind of like humans colonizing Earth, but these people are on their planet doing the same thing. And the way that they function and get through life is through sort of amorous telekinesis, so they can link minds in a sort of sexual way and kind of read one another's thoughts and kind of understand the characters of each other, and it's a very interesting adult kind of magic system, I suppose. We follow mainly Princess Marina, who is the main character. She's a princess of the Zelenan line, and she's on a hunting expedition when she comes across a group who have been stranded on the planet. This group have been marooned there by pirates, and the leader of them is Major Henneran Bromarsh, or Bromarsh as he's kind of just called throughout the rest of the story. One of their major strengths is healing powers, and so it's pretty good that this group of different people stumbled into this planet as a maroon place, as a place to be marooned, because they are able to be healed by the princess, and she kind of takes them all under her wing, particularly Bromarsh, and shows him and the other characters the ways of their world, which is quite different and alien to what the characters themselves have come from and what they know. They're from a more earth-based society. They kind of understand our ways a lot more than the alien ways, but it's kind of a full immersion situation. They get thrown into court politics quite quickly. They have to kind of try and understand and navigate the different political currents. Particularly, I think Bromarsh gets thrown into it more than any of the others, because the princess takes a particular interest in Bromarsh and wants to have sexual relations with him. On this planet, it is very matriarchal, so men are looked down upon quite heavily, and they are often treated just as sex slaves and not really as much else. It's very female dominated, which is interesting, but I felt was done with a bit of a heavy hand. I would have liked maybe a bit more subtlety to it. When Princess Marina actually meets Bromarsh and the others, she immediately reads their minds to try and find out if they are genuine and they are the people that they say they are, and she figures out very quickly that Bromarsh has been hiding a secret from a lot of people. He's actually a wanted man in the universe for a crime, but when she reads his mind, she realises that he is completely innocent of this crime, and so not only does she kind of welcome him in and the other people who are with him, she also then wants to try and help prove that he is innocent. Many of the Zelenans have really interesting quirks to them. They're sort of superior lovers and fighters. They have a lot of duels and contests, and the only real way that they die is through either suicide or being killed in a one-on-one fight, because they are such superior beings. They are physically and mentally stronger than humans by a long way. The slight quibbles that I kind of had with this was that you could tell very early on it was self-published and it hadn't really had the sort of benefit of a solid editor. I think this book, not only were there quite a few typos, but for me it just felt a bit predictable at places, and there was a kind of clunkiness to the writing in places. That's not to say that it was bad, it's just to say that at times my immersion was broken because I felt like the wording was slightly off, or it could have been done better and it just didn't flow as well as it could have done. But I would say that this is quite a minor quibble. And the other thing was the ending of the book. The ending felt incredibly sudden to me, and I feel like the whole way through I wanted to learn more about the culture, I was interested, but it just kind of came to a very abrupt ending, and I didn't feel like the cliffhanger was there for a good reason. I felt like it was there to make you buy book 2, but it wasn't there as a plot reason. It kind of just felt very, very rushed and abrupt, and I just feel like the story was almost just cut off. And I would have liked it to have more of a resolution at the end. Even if there was still a cliffhanger, it just didn't feel as well considered as it could have been. So yeah, overall, I was a bit unsure starting this kind of erotic sci-fi alien fantasy thing, but I actually did enjoy it in the end, and it was kind of a surprise to me how much I enjoyed parts of it. However, there were definitely problems I had with it, and I think, for instance, the editing and the style of writing was not my favourite. So overall I gave it 3 stars. I think it's a solid read and a likeable read, but I did have problems with it, and it wasn't my favourite of the 5. But going on to the 3 that I did really enjoy, and I'm really happy that I really enjoyed 3 of the 5, I'm now going to tell you a tiny bit about each, because I will actually be reviewing all 3 of these in like full length reviews because I think they deserve it. So the one that came third out of these 5 was The Heart of Stone by Ben Galley. I was not surprised to like this one, and Ben Galley is an author who I have read before, so I was hopeful that I would enjoy his work, and this I definitely did. It's about a stone golem kind of drafted into a war he doesn't really want to fight because it's a war between humans, and he has to learn a lot more about himself, his emotions, the people around him, and the way the world he's in works, particularly the magic, to overcome some barriers that he has mentally put up around himself and that other people have inflicted upon him over the years. That's kind of my tagline for it. It's a great little read, a really emotional, fun one at times as well, and I did really enjoy this, so I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'll be doing a full review very, very soon. My second place book for this 5 was Gift of the Phoenix, which is by Donna Cook, and this one was a kind of very classic fantasy to me. It was following 3 young men who are all from fairly different walks of life. One is a magician, one is a farmer, and one is the prince of the kingdom. And they've never met one another before until they all get given a magical stone from an old woman, and none of them really knows too much about it. She doesn't give them much information, but they find out that they are all part of a prophecy to hopefully fix this world, and they all have to come together despite their differences to try and find ways of fixing the world before the evil nemesis comes and kills the phoenix who gives magic to the world and ends everything. So that is the premise of that one. It's definitely very classic fantasy, quite a long read, but has some great moments, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I gave it a 4.25, I'd say. It wasn't perfect, but it was very, very good, and I did really enjoy it once I got into the characters. It's a classic fantasy through and through, and you guys know that I love a good classic fantasy, and this was definitely that. Finally, my number 1 pick for these 5 was The Exercise of Vital Powers, which is by Ian Gregory, or Gregor, I'm not sure how you say your name. But I really, really enjoyed this, and I was so pleasantly surprised to enjoy this because it wasn't the best written of the lot, but it was definitely the best story for me. And the characters and the fun just worked in its favour. I actually read this in about a day, I think, because I was so into it and I was just really enjoying the story. It follows a young kind of mage in training called Caden, who's at a university trying to figure out herself and also to learn the magic of this world. She is on a kind of revenge quest, but no one else knows about it yet, and the headmistress of the university takes a particular interest in her because she is a member of the Order, the most prestigious magical kind of council, I suppose, of this world, and she takes a particular interest in Caden because she sees potential there, but also danger. She sees something of a past evil in the world in this young novice, and so she tries her best to take Caden under her wing, but Caden and she instantly get off on the wrong foot and things get a bit worse as time goes on. And eventually she has to take Caden away on a journey to try and help Caden understand why she has an interest in her and what Caden can do to maybe change the way she thinks about the world and maybe change the things she wants to do and the evil that could happen if she doesn't change her ways. It was so fast-paced, it was fun, but it had excellent world building and character building, and it was just a great, solid story. So even though the writing wasn't the best, it was still a fantastic debut, and I really enjoyed it. So I will, again, be reviewing this one in a full review very soon, so look out for that. I'm really excited to tell you more about this one, guys, because it's definitely up there with like my favourite of them so far. So those are the first 5 books I read for SPFBO. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below on the 2 that I reviewed fully and the 3 that will be coming very soon. Let me know what you think of them and whether they sound like something you could be interested in. The great thing about these books is that almost all of them are super duper cheap on Kindle because they are self-published books. So please go and support these authors. If any of them sound interesting, go and pick them up because they are fantastic little reads, and I was so honoured to be chosen as a judge and so excited to bring these books to you guys, to make you aware of them, to hopefully get you excited about them and hopefully get more people reading them and supporting these authors. So please do let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.